Hey guys, Grüße aus Deutschland, greetings from Germany. It's time for another update from my neck of the woods. The weather here has been cold and rainy with with lots of rain and cold temperatures, almost winter-like. But you know me, I prefer that over summer weather anytime. I cannot stand heat. My sister and I have been busy dealing with a lot of red tape and appointments for the situation regarding our parents. And I gotta admit, I'm still having a really rough time dealing with the thought of my father having worked all his life without a day of unemployment, decades of full-time employment, and now that he could finally enjoy his life and rest on his laurels, he has to spend most of it on the care of my mother. And his health, of course, is deteriorating more and more too because he's at that age. It can be expected since he's in his mid 80s. But it's really sad, and that is because my father was the one that always said, go to school as long as you can, get good grades, and then get yourself a respectable job, one that's dependable. Like I'm gonna have to film the video where I'm going to talk about how my dream profession would have been a radio DJ, but my parents talked me out of it, saying that it's not a dependable job, and so they basically turned me into a secretary, into an admin assistant, somebody that is versed in administration. And they always told us to make as much money as you can to work for your retirement. And looking at them now, it all seems like a big slap in the face, a big slap. And also while I was in the States, I was working as a um, hotel reception clerk, agent, whatever they called it. And I talked to so many people because when they heard my accent, of course, they said, you don't sound like you're from around here. Where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. And so they would tell me their life story. And I had so many of them telling me how they lost everything because they had invested money on the into bonds and all kinds of stuff, and they lost so much money, they lost their lifetime savings, or because of scams or whatever. And so life is so fragile when you look at it. You work and work every day, you get up and you work hard for that money, more or less hard. Others, some of us do not. And um, and then when you get old, all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation where all that money that you have worked for to get that retirement is going to go for something you could totally not see coming. And just for the records, in Germany, retirement is it's great, and you get a lot of help if you need it. But if you make or if you get as much retirement as my dad does, they won't help you. They will just say you're gonna have to spend all your money on your wife, and now he's in a situation that breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because he was convinced that what he was doing is correct, and it was. It was. I mean, even looking back, it was the correct thing to do. But looking at him now is so rough. It is so rough. And so my sister and I are doing everything to take the pressure off of him. And so that's what I've been busy with. Also, on my other channel, I posted my commentary on another video, and to explain my reaction to it or my commentary on it, I did a little story time, after which I received several inquiries about more details to the story. And so, I'm going to play that story time here, and then I will say some more about it. The reason why I react so allergically to people not taking responsibility for their actions, I'm going to share with you now. So I was married twice. My first husband was a full-blown alcoholic. The second one was a full-blown sociopath. So the first one was not only addicted to alcohol, but he was also violent. I put him in the hospital 3 times. My first husband was about 6 feet tall, and he was a former boxer and lumberjack. You can imagine he was not skinny. He was also in the army. That's how I met him. And so he was roughly 240 pounds, being 6 foot tall. When he drank alcohol and he had Native American blood in him, you know the whole story about fire water and Native Americans not being able to handle it. It is not a myth. I can tell you that. It is not a myth. And so when he drank when he was drinking beer, it was fine. When he drank hard alcohol, he turned into an evil version of himself. And so he would be verbally abusive, and when he started being physically abusive, I put him in the hospital 3 times in a row. And then I divorced him. You know, I filed for divorce, um, giving him the reason that if he attacked me one more time, I would take him completely out and I'm not going to prison for him. And why I'm telling you this is because the next day, after, you know, like a drunken rage or whatever, the next day he could not remember. It was almost like he blacked out, but he still talked, he still moved, and he did things, you know, but the next day he couldn't remember. And so he would say to me, how can I apologize for something I can't remember? And I said, this, my friend, is not going to fly. I don't care what's going on with Native Americans and the fire water and them not being able to handle it. When you get in my face, it makes no difference if you're intoxicated or not. I will take what you say at face value, and you will take responsibility for it. And so the first, I don't know how many times, the next morning I would say, sit your ass down, we're going to talk about what happened the night before. And we did. And it got more and more toxic. And I thought, I don't know why, but I thought when we have these talks, he's going to realize, oops, maybe I shouldn't drink the fire water anymore. But he continued to do it. And so we would just start turning in circles. And so when for the first time he attacked me physically, I instantly defended myself to a degree where we had to call the ambulance. And the second and the third time too, and that was it for me. I was out. And so I filed for divorce, and I told him that that I'm not going to prison for doing anything to defend myself, because the next time I'm going to stop him for good. And that is why I cannot stand people that want to hide behind, oh, I was on drugs, I was drunk, I was this, I was that, I was distraught. Everybody needs to take responsibility for their actions and words. All right, and so here's a little more info on that. We were talking about it in the comment section of my other channel, but it's so hard to type all of this, and that's why I chose to make a video and talking more about this. And so who I was talking about is, of course, like I said, my first husband. I met him in 1990, and in 91 we got married. In 95 we had our daughter, and in 96 we were divorced. And it actually, looking back at it now, even though it's been a while, it still bothers me sometimes that I spent a few years with him. And that was only because I figured he's going to change, because he kept telling me that he's going to change. And of course, affirming that he loves me and that he doesn't want to lose me. And then when our daughter was born, I gave him so many ahead warnings. I said, if you don't get your situation under control, and if you don't either stop drinking or just drink beer, which when he did, he was fine. But I remember this one time when I said to him, you're gonna have to choose between the bottle and a family. And he picked up that bottle of whiskey and downed it, bottoms up, out of the bottle. And that was the answer that I needed, the information that I needed to decide I'm not going to let him continue doing this. And about defending myself and putting him in the, not in the hospital, but in the emergency room 3 times was in self-defense. And it was because the first time he attacked me, I was so shocked that my survival instinct instantly kicked in and I started beating up on him. I couldn't even stop anymore. It was so bad because I couldn't get how somebody that claims to love me could attack me physically. And then the second time, it was even though it sounds sad to say that now, but the second time, it was like I had had a head warning, and so I knew that he was capable of actually coming at me, and so it was even worse. And the third time was the last time because I didn't even recognize myself anymore. I'm not a very physical person. I would never attack anybody, but he really came at me, and I'm not talking about um, in the sense like I said earlier that he used to be a boxer and a lumberjack. If he had wanted to knock me out, he could have. But he didn't box me, he just, pushed me and did stuff like that. Once he threw me over a couch while I was pregnant, but we both didn't know at the time that I was pregnant already, but he threw me over a couch. So he picked me up and threw me. And so it's bad. It doesn't, like looking back now, it doesn't hurt as bad as it did back then. But back then I was crushed. I was 27 years old and I had just had my daughter when I decided that he needs to leave the family picture and it's going to be up to me to do it. Um, because I asked him to move out. I said maybe it's better, not for us to get a divorce, but maybe for him to move out. That way he can drink during his free time and we just meet every once in a while and then it's going to be quality time. And to that he responded that I have somebody on the side and I just want for them to move in, which of course was BS, complete BS, because I had a daughter to worry about and my body was still in the process of going back to normal from a pregnancy, and of course it was the farthest thing from my mind to have another man in my life. And also, the whole thing with that marriage so traumatized me that for 4 years, from 1996 to 2000, I didn't even date anybody. I didn't even look at another man because I was so shocked that a man that I love, who gave me the impression that he loves me back, which he did, um, would was able to treat me like that. That was traumatic for me. And also, every once in a while, when I get depressed, I do resent having spent this much time with him. I was so pretty, not saying I'm ugly now, but I was so pretty, my body was young, I could have done so much better. And I didn't, because I kept believing him when he said that he's going to change, and he just didn't. And so I was with him from 1990 through 1995, December 95. That's when my daughter was about 8 months old, and I got a court order to get him to move out. Otherwise, he wouldn't have moved out. And also, I co-signed an apartment for him because he wouldn't have been able to get one. And I helped him find an apartment also. And I never wanted the war that he wanted because his ego was bruised. Um, but he kept, like, stalking me and coming by my daughters and my place and stuff like that, drunk. And I said earlier that I never, or I think I did, I'm not sure if I cut it out, but that I never charged him. I never pressed charges against him, but once I did, um, because he had attacked me, and so I picked up the bread knife, and that is one with a really long blade, and I just had it in my hands, and I said, if you take one more step closer, I would slice you like a turkey. So make your move. And he walked towards me, and as drunk as he was completely out of his mind. He stepped closer to me, and he used both of his hands to grab the blade of the knife. And I know none of you have ever seen my hands, or at least not up close, but they're pretty muscular from the fact alone, I guess, that I type. I can type faster than I speak. And so I was holding on to that knife, and he was trying to jerk it out of my hand by grabbing with both hands the blade. And of course, he cut his hands all up, and so we had to call an ambulance. And he kept what he also did, and this is disgusting, but this is one of the situations that when people say to me, how can you stay so calm in life, is because I've been through situations like what I'm gonna tell you. And that is, there was blood squirting out of his hands because they were all cut up. And he walked through the entire apartment spraying blood everywhere, on the furniture, on the carpet, on the walls, everywhere. It took me days to remove all the blood. And because I kept finding new spots where he had sprayed it, like if you have stuff sitting on a shelf, for example, I did take everything off and I put it back up, but then I kept seeing spots where the blood was. It was a nightmare, and so he couldn't have driven himself to the hospital because he was completely drunk, and I didn't drive him to the hospital because I said this is no longer my problem. Get yourself an ambulance. And also my sister was there. And so we called an ambulance, and when they came, when there's domestic violence resulting in such cruelty, like him squirting blood everywhere, and he also, while he was drunk, he was telling um, the uh, the ambulance technicians or emergency medical technicians, he was telling them that his wife had done this to him. And so they're obligated to call the cops right away. And so I don't know how long it was, but the cops came, and my sister and I were both sober. Of course, we were drinking tea and playing video games. And so when the cop rang my doorbell in the middle of the night, I opened the door, and he said, "Can you tell me why you tried to kill your husband?" I said, "Oh my God." And I looked at my sister, and we were like shaking our heads. And so I told the cop to come in. I told him the story. And I said, "You can also check into my background." I mean, he has a violent background with his first wife and the kids already. He had two sons and a wife before me. And so I told him that, and I said, "You can check me out. I have a government job, and I've never done anything." And so he said, "Yeah, we're gonna check it out. We're just taking your statement now." And so once I had to charge him, I pressed charges against him for domestic violence, and then the alcohol level in his blood also indicated to the German authorities that this was not a one-time thing, that he has ongoing alcohol addiction problems. And so he had to go to counseling and all kinds of stuff. But that is just to correct my statement that I never pressed charges. I did that one time. And also, way before that, um, we were married already, but he was still in the army. And he was acting up. He was trashing the entire apartment, but I was still at work, and I was working at the DMV at the time. And so he called me at work completely drunk in the early evening, right? And he said, "Where the F are you at? What are you doing?" And I said, "You just called me at my office. What are you talking about? I'm at work. I'm working overtime." And he said, "Yeah, right. You probably have a boyfriend." And I said, "Yeah, me and Frank," that was my coworker, "me and Frank are under the table here. What do you think?" Jesus Christ. I said, "I will hang up now and just, calm down." And so I finished my work, and then I went home. I don't know how many hours later, maybe one or two. And as soon as I got through the door, the entire apartment was trashed. He had knocked over furniture. My shelves were empty. We had a chinchilla that was in a large cage, huge cage, and he had knocked him over. And this entire, the stuff that you put on the bottom of the cage. And so I instantly called the cops, the MPs, the military police. I called them, and when they came, I said, "Yeah, he's totally wasted. He's gonna have to go." And so they arrested him, but let him out at 2 a.m. when he was still completely drunk. And he came home, and I said, "If you want me to call the German cops, be my guest. I'm not putting up with your drunk ass anymore." And so yeah, he just went to bed. He said, "I just want to go to bed. I can't sleep in the cell." And I said, "Yeah, we're going to talk in the morning," because this was, again, of course, bullshit. This is crazy. And see, if I had learned back then, I would have never had a daughter with him. I never would have moved anywhere with him. But I did, because I believe that he can change. And I didn't know at the time. I found out when I moved to the States in 2007, I began to find out why he was the way he was, because we were in touch with his parents. I moved to the States with my second husband, but we all lived together under one roof. And so his mother kept telling me, like his father was a drinker and yada yada. And so I got to put the puzzle pieces together over the years, why he was being the way he was. He was like living out family patterns from before. And I didn't know, because I didn't grow up in a family with, drug addicts and alcoholics. And so when the first time he verbally attacked me, I was like, "What are you doing? Are you trying to ruin this?" But since he was drunk, I mean, every time he was drunk, he was not thinking clearly anymore. I mean, more than another person, because he couldn't even remember the next day. And so yeah, I figured it out later. Like, we were still in touch the entire time I was in the States. And I got to have a whole lot of good talks with him, like where he said, "What happened to us? What happened?" And I said, "I don't know. You were a complete drunk, and I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I had to put an end to it." And he said, "And you always wanted to be right. And what sucked was that you were always right. There's absolutely no way to live up to your expectation." And I said, "No, I lowered my expectations to be with you, and then I left it at that. But then when so I made compromises to be in a relationship with you, but then you dropped the quality of what you're bringing to the table even more." And that's when I had to say, "Yeah, no, something is not working here for me." But I still continued the relationship. And then when he, of course, started attacking me physically, I wouldn't have gone to prison for him for the rest of my life, just because I defended myself. And so that's how that all happened. But it all happened, what, 20, 24, 28 years ago. And I can't say that I'm over it. I'm still disappointed sometimes. And looking back, I'm also a little bit mad at myself for giving him this much time to prove to me that he will never change. And it got worse. When he moved back to the States in 2004, he drank and he got arrested. I mean, he never put down the bottle. He never did. And so he's now almost 60 years old. He just turned 59. And he still hasn't quit drinking. And I'm glad that I know that now, because it could be me in his life right now, still hoping that he will put down the bottle. And yeah, this is just one of the story times from my life. I have recorded all of this in videos, neatly separated into topics, my first marriage, my second marriage, and in a rage of decluttering on my channel here, I deleted all of them. But yeah, maybe I'm gonna bring them back, like if there's an interest for it. talking about how I went about life or what I've experienced in life. Because I keep seeing, like, when I do talk about it in the comment section, that it helps people um, to hear another person's story. And I share that sentiment because, as some of you know, I love to read autobiographies of celebrities. Like, let's say, Matthew Perry is one of the last I read, or Nick Carter from the Backstreet Boys, Sting from the Police. And I love reading them because people get at a certain age, and not all of them can make sense of their lives, but some of them do. And then they write books, and I love to read them. I love to read them. And so I can see where it helps others when they hear about extreme experiences like this. I mean, I never thought that I would be in a relationship with somebody as abusive as him. And he had already abused his first wife and got into trouble for it in the military, and he never learned. But at the same time, I don't want to sound too judgy, because the fact that he couldn't hold his liquor due to the fact that he was, he had Native American blood in him, is of course no joke. And that alone would be enough to say, yeah, okay, so maybe he shouldn't have had whiskey then, hard liquor, if he knew that he can't remember what he's saying and doing the next day. But when he explained to me, like, I asked him while I was living in the States, I said, I gotta ask, and don't take this the wrong way. And if you get mad, I'm gonna go off on your ass. I just want to know, why did you ever start drinking, and why did you never quit? And he actually responded in a very sensible way. He said that it was the way to go. I mean, when they were young, they were all drinking. And then it seemed like others stopped drinking, but he kind of never did, because um, he has a mindset, and I believe he has ADD, at least bipolar disorder, maybe at the worst. Um, he he said that he is worried about the future, and he sees a monster behind every corner. Like, every time he has to depend in life on things to go right, they go wrong for him. And so, in order to not fear that monster behind every corner, or the problems behind every corner, he would just like to numb his feelings. And then he got used to it. And then when the damage was done, I mean, his liver is shot. I mean, if you could see him, I wished I could show you before and after pictures, or when he was young and what he looks like now. It's it brings tears to my eyes to see him that way, because he was a hunk. He was a head turner when I was with him, and he no longer is. And I don't think he has much time left. And since he never quit drinking, it's gonna just keep going like this. And I also feel very guilty, because I had a daughter with him, and at the time I thought, okay, just eliminating him from the family picture would be enough. But it kind of wasn't, because he wanted visitation rights with our daughter. And so I allowed that. I mean, I got sole custody on his drinking history alone. Um, he did things after we were separated, like fall asleep drunk at a red traffic light. The German police doesn't really like that, if you can, as you can probably imagine. And he did lose his driver's license, and then he drove without a license, and it just kept going. He was just a troublemaker every time he was drunk. And so I still let him see our daughter. Um, but then like, I felt ashamed for the quality of man that I had picked. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I was actually glad when, like, I mean, it broke my heart every time he would call at short notice and say he's not going to pick up our daughter, and he has something to do this weekend, and she would sit there with the bag next to her already, and I was the one that had to deal with that, right? And he did that so often. And then, of course, in 2004, he moved to the States because he couldn't handle the German economy anymore. The German economy was in the dumps. I mean, it still hasn't recovered, and now we've been through the pandemic, and so it's it's all a big mess. But he moved back to the States after. I can't remember when he got to Germany. Must have been in the 80s, late 80s. And so in 1990 we met. And so he stayed in Germany until 2004 and he moved back. And so my daughter and him kind of lost a little bit of touch. But then my second husband and I had problems just making a living. And so in 2006, we called my ex-husband in the States and we said, could you help us get on our feet? I mean, we constantly did favors back and forth for each other. Like, for example, when my first husband left to go back to the States, my second husband and I cleaned out the apartment and took care of everything when he was gone already. And we also drove him to the airport. And so we asked him if he would help us get on our feet just for a little while. And he said he would. And that's how we ended up living all under one roof. My first husband, my second husband, and my daughter from the first marriage. That's my only child. And so, yeah, this is how all of that happened. And I wished I could have saved my daughter from having to learn what kind of a father she has. I felt ashamed that she had to learn that he drinks a lot and that for the most part he really says off-color things. And, it continued in the States, but then she was a lot older, of course, when we got there. And there were family reunions and he would act out. And we were the ones that had, taken him there and drove him back home. And so it was, I don't know, it was an experience that lasted for decades. And I didn't see that coming when I met him in 1990. All right, but I don't want to make this too long, but I'm planning on making more of these recordings to deal with what I'm currently going through because I've been seeing a lot more people from Generation X, and I don't like these generation names. It's just, what is that, right? It's like saying somebody's blonde or has black hair, and so they're going to give a certain generation a certain name. But I've noticed that Generation X, which is the generation I'm from, born between 1965 and 1980, that more of my generation are now coming out comparing what life was like when we were younger and now, what the younger people are experiencing now. And I find that so interesting, and I would like to let that flow into my channel here and talk about that some more because life has changed a lot in the last decades, and especially with the pandemic. And I would like to, like, you know, talk about my feelings and thoughts about that, and also react to some videos. And because I find that fun, and it seems to be part of my mission right now. I mean, I look at my parents and how their lives are ending, and I look at my life being like maybe midway through. I don't know if we're gonna improve medicine or use rife machines or whatever to make it to easily make it to an age of 100. I don't know. If that's the case, I'm only halfway through my life. And so I'm looking at that, like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And also dealing with losing one's parents. I mean, they're still around, but my mom is pretty much completely gone. Her body is still here, but everything else is gone. And my father is on that path too. And so it's kind of interesting to look around, like to look into the past, not to be stuck in the past, but to kind of compare, like, what was life like when we were kids and what are the kids nowadays experiencing. I've recently been finding that very interesting. And so, Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. All right, you guys, I'm going to go get my day started. Thank you for listening to this. Let me know what you think or if you have any experiences to share. And I will see you in my next one. Tschüssi. Bye.